For more, eh? Excellent.
You're just in time for the latest chat from the crypt. This time I'm wandering through the world of pocket monsters once more to check out the third batch of paradoxrift cards previewed by the official Pokémon website. In my humble opinion, they're not quite as potent as the ones I covered previously, but I can say with some certainty that this video will be worth watching regardless. Enjoy the video. If you do, please leave a like or a comment, and for more Pokémon and trading card game content, please consider subscribing to Cards from the Crypt.
It would be a pleasure to entertain you. And now, on with the show.
This video begins with a debut from one of the Alola region's guardians, Tapu Koko. Despite being both a legendary and an EX Pokémon, it's not as powerful as the rest of the previewed monsters. There are some truly mighty beasts on this list, as you'll see if you stick around. Tapu Koko is an electric type with a fairly chunky 210 HP. Not bad, but not great, especially when compared to some of the other EX Pokémon in the set. As far as attacks go, there's a choice of two. The first, Vengeful Shock, costs 2 energy and does a base 30 damage, although this can be bumped up to 120 if one of your Pokémon was knocked out in the previous turn. This particular boost also has the effect of paralysing the foe's active Pokémon, which is a nice bonus. It's a fair chunk of damage, but you're not really getting the value out of those 2 energy cards you have to attach. The cost of the attack is fairly expensive, especially considering that there are non-EX Pokémon in the set doing more damage for less energy, like Tinkaton. The second attack, Extreme Current, does a more respectable 180 damage for 3 energy. The drawback to this damage increase is that you have to discard an energy from Tapu Koko to use it. Not a problem if energy cards are abundant in your deck, but if you're trying to run as lean a build as possible, trashing any could set you back considerably. My personal opinion is that Tapu Koko is a fairly average addition to paradoxrift, which is a shame because it's an awesome Pokémon that was hugely popular in the Sun and Moon era of the game. I know that not every card in a set can be a banger, and that the middle-of-the-road cards make the really great ones even more appealing, but I think that this particular legendary got thrown under the bus a little bit. It feels to me like this version of Tapu Koko doesn't really deserve its EX status, especially when there are huge cards like the aforementioned Tinkaton, which is a rival to some of the set's most potent monsters, despite only being a regular Pokémon. Having said that, the card artwork is fabulous. It's a symphony of colour and detail that really stands out as being one of the better illustrations we've seen of the set so far. The artist, Jerky, really did this legendary Pokémon justice. It's just a bit disappointing that such great artistry has been attached to such an average card. I'm sorry to say that in this case, I'd rather not have a bowl of Cocoa Pops.
Coco's new adventure, the magical spoons.
Next up is another famous face from Pokémon history. Stomping onto the scene all the way from the Hoenn region is the continent's Pokémon Groudon. It's great to see classic monsters making a debut in the new set, but this legendary beast makes a considerably more subtle appearance in paradoxrift. It's a mere shadow of the rampaging force of nature that terrorized Hoenn in Pokémon Ruby. Groudon is a fighting-type basic Pokémon with a modest 130 HP. Given that there are so many powerful monsters in this new set, this may mean that it doesn't hang around on the battlefield for very long. It has a retreat cost of 3 energy, but I'm guessing that it will get knocked out more times than it retreats. This is definitely a Pokémon that you prepare on the bench before you send it into battle, rather than throwing it under the bus right away and powering up on the fly. And if you're facing a grass-type deck, it might even be an idea to just have it cheering from the sidelines, because any grass Pokémon worth their salt is going to smear this chunky boy all over the canvas. Nothing says "a done goofed" like being destroyed by a Metapod. As far as attacks go, Groudon has 2 to call on. The first, Swelling Power, allows you to attach a fighting energy to one of your Pokémon. Not bad value for just 1 energy. But it's Magma Purge that you'll be using the most. It costs 3 energy to power up, and once activated allows you to discard up to 4 additional energy cards from your Pokémon team, doing 60 damage for each. So potentially we're looking at 240 damage per turn, which is a not inconsiderable wedge of beatings. But given that Groudon isn't exactly flush with HP, you may only get to use Magma Purge once before handing over a prize card. As Paradox Rift is replete with powerful EX Pokémon, this particular legendary might not make much of a dent in your opponent's strategy. Maybe the idea is to keep it in reserve until late in the game, by which time you should have enough energy in play to really get the most out of Groudon's offensive capabilities. It seems to be a great Pokémon for that last desperate push to victory, if it lasts that long. Despite Groudon's muted debut in terms of effectiveness, the same cannot be said for the card artwork, which is one of the best illustrations I've seen so far of the set. Nurikabe has really gone all out to make this legendary Pokémon look seriously fearsome. While Groudon is on the field, it's bound to grab your foe's attention with its stunning looks. Just don't let it get within sneezing distance of any Grass-type Pokémon.
What?
Now we're getting somewhere. Fresh from the giddying heights of her debut in Paldea Evolved, Tinkaton returns for Paradox Rift, minus the EX chops. Having said that, she's still a slugger. Perhaps not on the same scale as her Battle Deck appearance, but certainly a force to be reckoned with. Tinkaton is a Stage 2 Psychic-type Pokémon. Health-wise, she stands at 130 HP, which is a very respectable stat for a non-EX monster. To put this into perspective, she can take the same damage as the aforementioned Groudon, who is a legendary Pokémon. So either Tinkaton is freakishly strong, or Groudon has been thrown under the bus in its latest appearance. I like to think it's the former, because as we all know, the Pokémon Company is always right, and anyone who disagrees with them is a Japanophobe who wants the terrorists to win.
You like the terrorists!
Well, I guess you're right again.
Attacks-wise, Tinkaton has two options. For a single Psychic Energy, you get Crushing Blow, which does 30 damage. Not bad value considering it strips the opponent's Pokémon of an energy card to boot. Having said that, it's Alloyed Hammer that you're really after. It costs a single Psychic Energy and does a base damage of 60. However, if Tinkaton has any Metal Energy attached, the total damage skyrockets to 180, which is immense value. Tinkaton is a real conundrum. She's a Psychic-type Pokémon that is adept at using brute force against the opponent. I might be mistaken on this one, but I always saw Psychic types as being able to gain the upper hand through indirect means, perhaps through the gradual application of damage counters, or by making use of special conditions. The Pokémon that springs immediately to mind when I think of Psychic types doing chunky damage is the Mewtwo that appeared in the Scarlet and Violet base set. Its reflective barrier attack turned the foe's strength against them, for some major league beatings. The downside is that the opponent actually had to inflict that pain on Mewtwo for it to be effective. Without Mewtwo taking a slap, the move's base damage was a minuscule 20 HP. So as you can imagine, a raw power Psychic type like Tinkaton is a really interesting concept. The fact that it's powered by two different types of energy opens up a raft of possibilities for designing dual-type decks. There's potential to combine the evasive nature of Psychic with the more rough and ready physical prowess of Metal, the Scarlet and Violet block having many powerful Pokémon of both types. It looks like my King Gambit card has received a promotion to active service. Fancy drinks coaster no more.
We're here to make coffee, Metal.
The penultimate entry on this list is a true EX Pokémon. Toxtricity EX has got it all going on. A big wedge of HP to absorb damage, a battery of hard-hitting attacks, and card artwork that would make your high school art teacher weep with joy. It may have appeared previously in the Pokémon TCG, but this card is its proper debut. And what a debut it is! Toxtricity EX is a Stage 1 Pokémon that has undergone a Terra transformation, changing its type from Lightning to Fighting. It has a seriously chunky 260 HP, costs a fairly economical 2 energy to retreat, and for some reason is the second Pokémon on this list that is weak to grass types. Perhaps Gym Leader Erica has shares in the Pokémon Company or something. Like I mentioned before, Toxtricity EX is seriously well endowed when it comes to fighting. It knows 2 moves. The first is Knocking Hammer, which costs 2 lightning energy and does 70 damage. The added bonus of Knocking Hammer is that it discards the top card of your opponent's deck, which might not seem like a big deal on its own, but if your entire strategy is built around milling cards, Toxtricity is a great start. But why settle for the appetizer when the main course is so delicious? Gaia Punk costs 3 lightning energy and hits the opponent for a hefty 270 damage. The only drawback is that you have to discard 3 lightning energy to use it. But there is a loophole. The energy you discard can come from any of your Pokémon in play, so Toxtricity won't necessarily become dead weight for several turns because you discarded all the energy cards attached to it. This becomes more viable in the later stages of a game, when it's likely that you'll have several powered up Pokémon on the bench to take the energy from. If you make sure that Toxtricity always has at least 2 energy attached, you'll always have options, whether it be a last-ditch knocking hammer or a well-timed retreat. The worst case scenario is that Toxtricity will be left on the field without any energy, but if you find yourself running short, its considerable HP may well be enough for it to stay alive until you can get it powered up again. Yes, there is the risk of losing 2 prize cards if it becomes a sitting duck, but with careful energy management that shouldn't be a problem. The bottom line is that the advantages of having Toxtricity on your team easily outweigh the drawbacks. With careful planning and support from the bench, it can be an engine of destruction that feasts on prize cards in the tiers of your opponents. Terra Pokémon? More like terrifying, am I right?
Shut up, bitch!
And so we come to the final card in this video. The top spot goes to a long-time veteran of the Pokémon card game who's had the full Terra treatment for paradoxrift, making it even more badass than it was to begin with. Yes, Hooper has been part of the TCG since the Ancient Origins card set, way back in 2015, but its latest appearance is arguably the best version of the Jin Pokémon to date. It may not be quite as durable as Toxtricity EX, but what it lacks in HP, it makes up for in brute strength.
Allow me to elaborate.
Hooper EX is a basic Pokémon with 260 HP. It's undergone a type change for this latest appearance, from Dark to Fighting. However, its moveset is still fueled by Dark Energy. Hooper is weak to Psychic-type Pokémon and costs 2 energy to retreat. As far as the aforementioned moveset is concerned, Hooper has 2 lines of attack. The first, Energy Crush, costs 2 Dark Energy to use, doing 50 damage to the opponent for each energy attached to all of the opponent's Pokémon. It's basically a much more damaging version of the move Psychic, made famous by mentally adept Pokémon like Mewtwo and Oranguru. Its secondary attack, Bandit Fist, costs 3 Dark Energy and strikes the opponent for 200 HP. The drawback to this move is that you can't use it twice in a row, but Energy Crush is so devastating in the late game that you might end up ignoring Bandit Fist entirely. Having said that, it's a nice safety net for early game situations where your opponent has a Pokémon with a high HP in the active spot, but hasn't yet distributed a lot of energy to their team. It's not likely to one-shot any EX Pokémon, but it'll certainly leave a hefty bruise. I think the strategy with Hooper EX is to deploy it later in the game when your opponent has set up several Pokémon for attacking. As it's a Terra Pokémon, it doesn't take any damage while it's on the bench, so powering it up on the sidelines is safe. It's likely that once Hooper is in play, its reasonable retreat cost will allow you to escape the battlefield without too much fuss. Generally speaking, if the opponent's Pokémon isn't an EX, Hooper is likely to survive their next attack, so feel free to take full advantage of that. In short, Hooper EX is a straight-up damage machine. Bandit Fist will take care of the little threats, and Energy Crush will steadily increase in power over the course of a match, making it ever more suited to taking out Evolution and EX Pokémon. Just don't go asking this genie for more wishes. And that's it. Thank you for watching the whole video. I hope it's been of use to you. If it has, a like or a comment would be very much appreciated. As far as paradoxrift is concerned, the card set drops on November 3rd, 2023, so swing by your local game shop and pick up some boosters. Thanks to Magic Madhouse for the card images, Bulbapedia for fact-checking, and YouTube for the video clips. And, as usual, much respect goes out to Jim Miles, the card gaming Master Yoda to my Luke Skywalker.
Always two there are. No more, no less.